All righty, so now we're being recorded. Um, Hello, everybody. This is the Walter Russell Secret of Light group, and we are on chapter 13, which is Unconsciousness, Sleep, and Pain. Now, for me, I don't know, some of you may or not have read the material, but for me, this is probably one of the most disappointing chapters that I've read from this book, and it was mostly because Walter did not really go into a lot. He made a couple of very big statements at the beginning, which we're going to review here. And from then on, he really didn't go into it. And I was discussing this a bit with Jeremy before the class. And it could be because Walter Russell really was not into health that much. That was not one of his real pursuits. He was mostly into science and art. He did live to be, the ripe old age, I think about 84 or so, or 94, excuse me.
94?
Yeah, I believe so. And, but so he might have not had any health issues or challenges, so therefore he didn't really explore it that much. It was mainly just in doing the work. So, so for this episode of our class, we're going to have quite a bit of questions that I've brought up to actually kind of refute some of the things that Walter said, and maybe because some of the information that's come up came after him, or he was not really focused on, because Walter had his own path he was walking, and I don't know if it really had to deal with psychology and the unconscious and subconscious mind. And again, we can all have our own opinions, and we're going to discuss that. So I don't want to say that my opinions are the correct ones. I'm just going to bring in some different views, and we can discuss those different views and come to consensus about what we all think. Not that we have to come to agreement. Just so feel free to chime in if you don't agree with what I'm saying or have things to add. Okay. And the way the class works for you guys, for Jeremy, since you haven't been here before, is I've taken some questions just directly out of the book. When I read the book, I take one of his statements, I create a question from it, and then we'll discuss that question and the answer that's given that Walter Russell gave. So with that being said, let's get started. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. Let's see here. I'm having a problem. Share screen 2. Okay, so we should be sharing screen 2 now. Can everybody see my screen 2? Can people see the chapter 3, Unconscious Sleep and Pain?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Thank you. So for the first question is, can man be unconscious? And from page 71, Walter Russell says no. We have always been conscious without the slightest awareness of it. So we're kind of unconscious of our unconscious. Any comments on that? To me, it's a little bit of semantics on the word awareness and unconscious.
Yeah, it's almost like pointing to like the witness. Like, yes, the witness is always like there, but you might not be identified as the witness or something.
Yes, and again, for what I'm seeing here is that I think that Walter's almost doing a double speak here to say that we're conscious, but we're not aware of it, which means that we're in a different state. And so, if you want to call that state unawareness, or you want to call it unconscious, it's kind of like the whole thing about positive, negative that we've talked about in the past. That there is no positive, negative. There's only charge and discharge. So the opposite of conscious would be disconscious, I guess, which could also be called unconscious. So, to me, like I said, this is more of a game of semantics than, because if we say we're unaware of it, what are we first? What would we be calling, and who defined the consciousness? So, the question number 2 is, who defined consciousness in the modern era? And this is a question that I came up with. Oh, come here. And so my answer would be Rene Descartes. Is everyone here familiar with Rene Descartes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, basically Rene Descartes was around from 1596 to 1659, so quite a ways ago before most of the people that we talk about. And he's famous for the proposition, "Je ne pense donc Jesus." In Latin, it is translated as cogito ergo sum, and in English, we know the popular phrase as "I think, therefore I am." Known as Cartesian dualism, this is like the Cartesian graph of X and Y, or mind-body dualism, his theory on the separation between the mind and body went on to influence subsequent Western philosophies. In Meditations on First Philosophy, Descartes attempted to demonstrate the existence of God and the distinction between the human soul and the body. Humans are a union of mind and body, thus Descartes' dualism embraced the idea that mind and body are distinct but closely joined. Thus, Descartes reasoned that God is distinct from humans, and the body and mind of a human are also distinct from one another. So for me, this brings up this image here of the thinker, which came out in 1840 by Rodin. And this is, this is the guy who's just sitting there and thinking and contemplating, right? And this is really where Western civilization began to separate the mind from the God mind. So where Descartes says, "I think, therefore I am," Russell would probably say, "I am, therefore I think." He would, flip that sentence and say. So, any comments on what Descartes had to say, or what I'm saying, or ideas about him really actually begin to become the thrust of what we consider to be the conscious mind, separated from the God mind?
Yeah, it seems to me that this could be one of the origins of what I would consider I don't know if I want to call it a fallacy or danger of so much of Western thought, and especially Western medicine, where everything is separate. And even his statement here about dualism embraced the idea that mind and body are distinct but closely joined, which I guess for me feels completely backwards from the change in my own thinking that everything is connected first and foremost, and that nothing is really distinct completely. A positive charge can't exist on its own without a negative charge, for example. The mind can't exist without the body. So it's, and I just wonder how much this influenced not just the ideas of consciousness, but even Western medicine, for example.
Well, it did, because Descartes is known for the one who actually started into specializations.
Yeah.
So because of him, you don't just have a holistic doctor now or someone who studies everything. You go down the rabbit trail of, whatever, heart specialist, lung specialist, all these different things.
Yeah.
And that's really, that whole system is really accredited to Descartes and this thinking. Now, I will, say that I think that Descartes was misinterpreted quite a bit.
That's fair.
I don't think that he was quite, he had a lot of God and God mindset in him, but I think that a lot of people, just as with Darwinism, picked it up and ran it to the extreme.
Yeah.
But again, I do see him as beginning the whole embracing of the God being separate from the mind and the body. And this is really where the Christian church the Catholic Church was actually kind of fine with this. And it actually goes back to Newton and some of the earlier scientists, is that the church really wanted to be in control of the soul. So they were pretty happy to say, okay, we'll be in control of the soul, and scientists can be in control of the body and the physical. and that's fine with us, you know. And so they kind of allowed it to start that direction also. But it was really the birth of what we would call materialism, right? Physical materialism, and that whole train of thought. So next question.
I was going to add to that.
Go ahead, Grant.
So like what this kind of brings up, I don't know like if he was the first one to bring up dualism or whatever, but this whole concept of the altered ego, meaning like the original soul ego has been altered to confuse itself with the thinking mind as I am. So that's where like this whole concept of dualism comes from, is it's all about the identification process. Are you identifying from center or up here in your ego where you think you can one up the universe by reorganizing it and trying to trade fake paper and trying to get more paper from the other guy or whatever, currency or whatever you want to call it. So that to me is like really this whole I think therefore I am the meaning, because like even when you look at like enlightenment, what is enlightenment? It's really just disidentification from the false beliefs and back into your original soul template or whatever. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that I think you're correct in saying that, you know, the idea of the I am, and that's another, you know, discussion on itself. But that's like I said, I would rework the phrase to say I am, therefore I think, right? Now, that being said, our brain and our minds, I think that there, you know, again, we have to get the distinction between mind and brain and thought. And the key is that all things are made from a one universal mind. But the mind is not thinking, the mind is knowing. And thought is not thinking, but thought is desire. And so when we say, you know, I am, that I am is the universal mind, and mind is not thinking, mind is knowing. So I think that we have to get back, and I think that was part of the Enlightenment, was people were actually trying to get back to the knowing rather than the thinking, and the beauty and certain aspects of life that portrayed the knowing, and getting away from just pure science and mathematics. Anything else before I go back to?
When I look at the French, because that's where he was from, je pense, donc je suis. You know, if you were to bring it up to the fact that man is the only kingdom on this earth that can reflect. So I think Descartes there, like you said at the beginning, they went too far with it. Like he might have had another, you know, higher thing that we're not seeing here, especially when you translate it in English. It just doesn't seem to
come off the same.
That's what I'm saying. And I don't even know Descartes. I'm just looking from the words, je pense, donc je suis, that power of reflection that, you know, anyway, just, we didn't live in his time, but I think they used it for like the purpose that you're talking about, for sure. Wasn't he a mathematician, Descartes?
No, I thought so.
No,
I think so, wasn't it?
He was a polymath. He did lots of things.
Okay. Yeah. Well, anyway,
I mean, like
just saying, if you look just at that, I have a better
again he
grasp than what this is all saying.
He created the Cartesian system, so yes, I would say he's a mathematician.
Yeah.
The XY grid and axis.
Yeah.
So, so with that, so we have the conscious mind, which is I think, therefore I am. So how do the definitions of the unconscious and subconscious differ? And let's look at that a second. So what I did with that was I just put together a few ideas on the unconscious mind. So Freud was kind of the first one to kind of talk about that if you get into psychology and so on and mind books, you know, and he was 1856 to 1939, and Freud's model of the unconscious is as a primarily guiding influence over daily life. Over the years, empirical tests have not been kind to the specifics of the Freudian model, though in broad brush terms, the cognitive and socio-physiological evidence does support Freud as to the existence of unconscious mentation and its potential to impact judgments and behavior. And I added the blah, blah, blah. So basically what Freud's saying is that we have this, you know, unconscious mind that runs our daily affairs. It's kind of like we're on a program, right? We're on the unconscious program. We're just moving along, you know, brushing our teeth, going to the bathroom, eating, doing all these things that are just a program for our daily life. And so this was really the beginning with Freud within his model of the mind for the unconscious mind. His predecessor, and the one who was supposed to take over from him, was Carl Jung, which didn't happen because Jung really separated on Freud's causal of everything being sexual in a sense, and didn't believe in a lot of what Freud was saying. So they had a big blow up, and Jung broke away from Freud. So Carl Jung was inspired by the ideas of Sigmund Freud and was keenly interested in the study of the unconscious. The personal unconscious contains the things suppressed from the conscious. On the other hand, collective unconscious contains things that are shared with other human beings from our past. So as Jung began to develop the ideas of Freud, one thing he came up with was that the unconscious actually suppresses things from the conscious. And this could be like within shock, like say when you see something that you can't handle, that you just can't see it. You didn't, you know, you'll say, well, did you see that? And what? I didn't see that. I didn't see, you know, because your mind can't handle it, right? So it's actually a kind of a protection mechanism, which can cause trauma later. But at that moment, it actually is helping you, because otherwise you would go into such a shock, you'd probably die from fright, right? It was kind of the idea that I spoke about before. I speak about it often when supposedly when the, you know, conquistadors or whatever arrived in the New World in South America, there was huge ships that came to the harbors, and only the shamans of the tribe could see them because the other people could not, because to fathom that there was people of such strength and power, they all would have keeled over dead right there. You know, it's kind of like seeing God, right? So the conscious mind may suppress it in the subconscious, and you might not even be able to see those things right now. Because it's in a protection mode for the person. Now, prior to all these people, you know, in 1688, which is basically about 100 years, 75 years before Freud, was Emanuel Swedenborg. And for Swedenborg, the sphere of the unconscious is intrinsically connected with spiritual experiences. Therefore, his ideas are not Freudian, but have more in common with those of Jung. What Jung shares with Swedenborg is the notion that man is alienated from himself in a hostile universe, and that spiritual experiences are essential to maintaining mental health. Swedenborg also had something that he called the supraconscious, which was actually the conscious state of spirituality. The one thing that I did find as I was actually exploring Swedenborg, Jung and Swedenborg a little bit more, was that Jung actually did give Swedenborg credit for archetypes. He said that Swedenborg was the one who actually developed the archetypes prior to him, which I'd never heard before. Next, we have 1861 or 1871. We have well, that wasn't right. We have 1861 is Rudolf Steiner. So he's a contemporary with Jung. And he says the essence of thinking can only be grasped through intuition. There is no unconscious, only dreams. So again, this gets back to what used to be talked about in ancient philosophies and ancient systems, was that there is two lives. There is the dream life and there is the physical life. And prior to, I would say, the Greeks, the dream life was considered more real than the conscious life. So, again, there is no unconscious, only dreams. Well, then what are you conscious in dreams? No. What state are you in? It's almost like you can't say there is no unconscious. You're in some type of consciousness that isn't of the conscious mind. We can call it subconscious or we can call it unconscious, but we have to call it some type of consciousness. Dream consciousness, whatever we want to call it. And then Walter Russell said, man cannot be unconscious. Man has always been conscious. And so again, I think that Walter's playing semantics. I think that Rudolf Steiner needs a better definition of what state we're in when we're in dreams. And that, Jung and Swedenborg are saying that not only do we have this unconscious, but we have a collective unconscious, which, Swedenborg also called the supra-conscious, and other would actually call the Akasha, which would be the mind of everything as flowing around us at all times. So I think that we are conscious. I think, and then I just put down, as I was looking at all these ages of people, I was just saying, well, everybody remember Jack LaLanne from the 60s and 70s? He outlived them all at 96. So as we do all these things, it's kind of like, we might want to look at what's our goals. If it's to live long, just be like Jack LaLanne, right? Just take care of your body and believe in God, and you'll live to be 96. So how does Russell's, so any comments, Grant, or anybody on the unconscious and subconscious?
Well, it's really interesting because like the Aborigines call like dream time the real reality, and they focus so much on this like astral realm of things and how it influences our everyday reality here. And I just can't help but think, with the limited experience that I have in the astral realm, and I'm sure everyone's is different based on where you're at in your state of consciousness. I could see where Jacqueline is talking about, or wait.
Oh, sorry, go back.
Sorry.
There you go.
Yeah, I can see where Steiner's talking about what he's talking about there, but I'm also kind of going down a Steiner rabbit hole. So
yeah. And this is what I think I talked about you with, a couple of times before, maybe it was last time, about, what do we really know, right? And what Steiner says, the only thing we really know is that which we can intuit, because all facts are secondhand for the most part. And as as we spent Sunday with a bunch of sovereign people and so on, and they were talking about law, and they were saying how false even our court system is when you have an attorney, because everything he has is secondhand. He can't really present the facts as firsthand because it's coming from his plaintiff or whoever. It could be 27th hand, but he's stating them as he really actually knows. And for a lot of our thinking and knowing, we're saying, we're repeating facts that could be 1,000 hand knowledge, right? It's come from many, 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 many different sources, many times over, repeated, just repeated wrongly, picked up, and so on. So that's why I think Steiner says that, is that the only way that we is to real. And so when he's saying through intuition, right? When Steiner's saying through, what is he grasping through? Is he grasping the shared unconscious, right? That Jung talked about, or the supraconscious that Emanuel Swedenborg's talking about, right? Or just the universal mind, which again is the Akasha, which is the supraconscious or the collective unconscious. So that's the unconscious. I used to get really confused because as we go forward here, I really want you to make note of the unconscious mind compared to what's next here, which is the subconscious mind. Okay, these are two different things, especially when you begin to study the mind and study different things.
So one thing I'm particularly curious about is, and I don't know if we'll get into this or if it's a different topic, but it seems related, which is what is reality? And what I mean by that is, I've been presented the idea that essentially this reality that we're in right now is like a video game.
Mm-hmm.
And that, if you go to dreams or unconscious or some of these other, well, let's just take dreams, that in a sense, that's like almost a layer of reality that's above, and we're actually living in a dream, but the reality is the other phase. I don't know if you want to call that astral or dream time or whatever, and kind of remembering that this is just that there's different layers of reality, like the movie. What was that movie?
The Matrix.
Inception. Was it Inception? Or where anyway, there was like multiple levels of reality. And
again, you weren't here for some of the first classes, but there's two topics or 2 points that Russell really wants to put forth, is that there is only one mind, and that's knowing, and that's the universal mind. Okay, it comes from source. So there's one source. That's point number one.
Okay.
The second point is that we are all projecting our reality just like a projector on a cosmic screen.
Sure.
Okay, so those are the 2 things that Walter Russell wants you to know.
Makes sense.
Some of the other classes and videos, if you want to go back and watch those, I get into how that is actually kind of done.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that we're into now, though, is you can say that we're projecting it, right? But what we are projecting and how can we influence our projecting has to do with all these layers of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
And how, so this would be like, which bulb are you on, right? So if you're on the conscious mind, you're on like the brightest light you can have.
Right.
And so things are very clear and things are very, the next would be the unconscious mind, which would be like the next level. And, you're kind of seeing it, but maybe not, reality. The lowest level is the unconscious. Everything's blurry. You can't make anything out. Right? There is no clarity in your mind. So that's why you kind of have to understand the levels of the mind and what level you're in to make sure that what you're projecting through your conscious mind, through your knowing, is what source wants you to see and create.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're in a state of confusion all the time.
Yeah.
Based on what mind level you're in. And so that's why I really want to show here that, because a lot of people don't even understand there is a unconscious mind and a subconscious mind.
Got it.
So Freud and Jung, right? We talked about them, and again, I just kind of lumped them together because they are kind of one and the same, a continuation of the other, but different. But so the existence of the subconscious mind is wanted to have been first discovered by Sigmund Freud. He stated that the subconscious mind is like a big storehouse for repressed desires that is exclusive to each individual, and they're shaped by your life experiences, your memories and beliefs that can't be deliberately brought to surface. So these are things, again, like even Jung talked about, that are kind of below the surface of your conscious mind. For example, our basic instinct, like urges for aggression and sex, are contained in the subconscious mind and do not reach our conscious because we see them as unacceptable to our rational and conscious selves. They are a part of your mind that you can't access by your own will, a portion of minds that sleeps within you, but in some ways affects your thought process, behaviors, and actions. So this is what, Freud is saying about the subconscious mind. So, and again, the subconscious mind could actually be like the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde idea, right? Where you have Dr. Jekyll's but he has this subconscious Jekyll in him that can be brought out by triggers, by certain things. You don't really bring it out yourself. Now, where it says here we can't accept them, can't access them ourselves. That I would say really depends on how well you know yourself and how well you want to access what Jung would call your shadow. Because that shadow dwells in the subconscious mind. Jung might even say it dwells in the unconscious mind. But this is where you have to realize that you have this conscious mind, unconscious mind. So with that, Swedenborg says 2 centuries before Freud, Emanuel Swedenborg described what could be called the supraconscious, higher levels of our mind that are above our conscious awareness and lift us up above the influence of our subconscious. So again, Swedenborg kind of alluded to a subconscious mind, but he also said there was a supraconscious mind. And Walter Russell says instinct, right? A cell memory record of all actions of a body and all the sensations caused by those actions. Instinct is a God control over the actions of his creation. So what Walter Russell would call the subconscious would actually be instinct. And last week we talked about a lot of these things, if you can recall those things, about, say, instinct for animals would be a homing response. It could actually even be, do we have homing responses that we've suppressed, that we've been told, and so on and so forth. And for that, we have an unconscious mind that, what part of our mind takes care of our heartbeat, our rhythms, right? Our blood flow, our growth of our hair, all these things are being controlled by something, by mind, right? So is that our subconscious mind? Right? Is it those autonomic things that are going on? So we have, our conscious mind, which is what we want to have. We have our subconscious mind, which is our conscious mind that we're just not aware of, that is just kind of below the surface. Then we have our unconscious mind, which is that mind that takes care of our autonomics, our instincts, and all those other things, because those are not all conscious to us. We can't. So at some point, Russell's got to say, there are other states than just consciousness. It might not be called unconscious, but it is a lower level of consciousness than consciousness. And then Jack LaLanne, I just put through this in here for some fun, once said, Billy Graham was for the hereafter. I'm for the here and now. You don't have to call it God or Jesus. That's religious humbug to a lot of people. But you've got to believe that nature and spiritual things surround us.
Yeah, I like that at the bottom there.
Yeah, so here's just a guy, right, that's just saying, you got to believe in God, but you got to take care of your body too.
Wow.
Any comments from anybody on the subconscious mind?
So to me, the instinct seems very different than subconscious somehow. Like it does not capture the suppressed stuff. I don't know, it just feels very different. Like I get instinct as being like an animal that, for example, you hear stories of before a tsunami hits, animals run to the hills. Like, well, how do they know? Like to me, that's kind of instinct. Or how do they know where to? I don't know. Which seems very different. Or like running your heart and your all of your autonomic responses seems distinct from what Freud and Jung are talking about.
Yes, and again, that's what I'm saying is that these are different. These are different definitions of each thing.
Yeah. Okay.
But to say that we only are conscious and there is no unconscious and there's only one state of mind is what Walter Russell's saying. I don't know if that's true either. Right. I think, and as we're going to talk about here a bit later, I think that can lead to problems for people. And so what I'm trying to do here is just throw up a lot of these terms because they're bantied about quite a bit. You'll hear things talked about the subconscious mind. Some people talk about the unconscious mind. So I just want to make sure that everyone knows there is a distinction and they are looked at differently by different schools of thought.
Yeah, got it.
Grant, you still there?
Yeah, for me, the subconscious is like, I like how Alan Watts puts it. I don't know if you guys ever read any of his work, but do you do it or does it do you? So does it do you is kind of like the subconscious autonomic instinct mind or all-knowing. The unconscious mind for me is like your unrealized potential. Like, for example, like you don't know what's going on in the seventh dimension, even though it's like right here with you probably, but maybe that's none of your business. Maybe that's just for the angels and the other things in those realms. So like, I don't know, like it's kind of hard for me to put my finger on the unconscious mind, but I definitely agree with kind of what Russell's pointing out with it being the instinct. And in fact, I was going to say, it's instinct. We talked about that last week.
No, we did the whole thing on instinct last week. It was really good.
Yeah, and so and I think what you're talking when you say that, you know, that there is you know, these angelic realms or planes of existence that we're not aware of, that's really what Russell's saying. That, you know, we can be conscious of those realms, we're just not aware of it. And but again, I could say you know, I can tell you right now, I'm aware there's other planes. Have I visited them? Have I experienced them? No, right? So
you're unconscious to them. Like,
yeah,
just
but I am aware of them,
Hmm.
right? I know they exist.
Hmm.
So it's not to be aware of something and to be actively engaged in it, I think are two different things.
Mhm.
I can be aware of a party going on next door. I'm not there, you know. So to be unaware, to be aware, and to be in a conscious state, I think are two different words and two different ideas. And I'm going to get into why I think it's so important here coming up.
So I think where we get confused is like our terms in this
Correct.
philosophy. Like someone says, "Don't be unconscious. Close your mouth while you're eating," or something like that. You know, it's like you're being so unconscious, man. But really, it's like you're not being mindful. You're not thinking about the other person's like experience eating with you, or something like that. You know.
Exactly, and I think that's what Russell's trying to say is that, you know, we're never not conscious, right? We're just unaware. But it does, as we talk with people and we begin to and the reason I'm kind of going into this into a lengthy fashion is just because as we go farther along here and get more and more into it, it's very important that we do begin to create the dialogue and the definitions of what we're talking about and who's talking about it, you know, under what guise they're being talked about. So the next question is, how does Russell's view of the unconscious differ from the work of Mesmer and Erickson in hypnotherapy? So is anybody here aware of Mesmer?
Yes, I mean, in general. Hypnosis, right?
Yeah, so Mesmer, as you can see this great, can you guys all see this picture over here on the right-hand side? Of Mesmer looking at the lady and he's transferring these waves into her head. So Franz Anton Mesmer from 1734 to 1815. So he is the modern era of hypnosis and hypnotherapy. Really begins with this guy, with Franz Mesmer, the Viennese physician who left the world mesmerism. So if you ever heard the word mesmerized or mesmerism, it comes from Franz Mesmer. Okay. So for various reasons, he also gave hypnosis the rather unsalable reputation that still persists in some quarters today, noting that he considered to be a similarity between gravity and magnetism. So again, Walter Russell often talks about magnetism and gravity. So Mesmer attempted to cure the sick through the application of iron magnets. Using the terminology of the day, he called the carrier of magnetic influence magnetic fluid, which he believed was the foundation of life itself and the principle by which organic bodies carry out their vital functions. Now, if you guys remember, as we'll talk about, is that that's what Russell's saying, that proceeds from God is magnetic light, right? So Mesmer might not have been too far off with magnetic fluid, but he looked at it in a different way. So he asserted that the inhibition of this vital force produced disease. Mesmer therefore developed a technique to remove obstructions to free flow of magnetic fluid in the body. After a period of experimentation in which he used mineral magnets to dissolve the blocks, he became convinced that the magnet of choice in healing is the physician's own body, which is capable of channeling the invisible fluid pervading the universe into the patient's body. This constituted his theory of animal magnetism.
Mm.
So if you guys ever heard the term animal magnetism, that comes from Mesmer, and also the idea of mesmerizing, right? Mesmerism.
Mm.
So when we're mesmerized, we're basically in a trance state. And that was the state that actually Mesmer would put people in. He'd actually hypnotize them or mesmerize them, and then use his own body to channel this magnetic fluid. Now, he was very, very well known, very accepted in society, so well known that people thought they didn't want him around anymore. They didn't want his quackery. So they had a commission put together with some of the greatest minds of the time, one being Ben Franklin, who went to prove that mesmerism didn't work, even though there was all these people that were cured, but they couldn't prove it. They couldn't scientifically prove it, therefore it didn't work. And he basically fell into ruin.
Yeah.
And everything else. Later on, Ben Franklin began to do experiments in magnetism and electricity and so on himself. But for that part, mesmerism pretty much, and the whole idea of bronze went away. Until, we get into the 1990s with Dr. Milton H. Erickson, and even Freud, and I mean Jung did a lot with hypnosis. So in Erickson's hypnotherapy, there is a presupposition the client has a conscious and an unconscious mind. So now as we move in, that's why I really kind of wanted to get into this unconscious and subconscious and conscious minds, because as we get into mesmerism, as we get into hypnotherapy and so on, these topics we have to be able to grasp these in order to actually understand what's going on here. So he had the conscious and an unconscious mind. Of course, this is only a model, but nevertheless a useful model for therapy. This model has evolved from the early Freudian concepts of the unconscious being a seething pit of repressed memories and experiences, revolving around sexual development, to the more humanistic principle of the unconscious mind being a reservoir of resources and skills to be nurtured and treasured. Erickson's hypnotherapy sees the unconscious as having several functions. One of the functions being the role of security guard. In this role, the unconscious holds back some experiences and memories to protect the client from pain. While these experiences and memories may be negative, they are not necessarily caused by early sexual development as in the Freudian model. So this again is where Jung and Erickson and some of the other people have separated from Freud and was within the whole sexual development arena. Another of the unconscious mind's functions is to store and sort positive experiences and memories. It is from this store that the therapist takes his ideas for therapeutic intervention. A third function of the unconscious is to oversee the body's autonomous processing and healing mechanism. So now, within this model, within Erickson, he's actually saying the unconscious is doing the autonomous processes. So within Erickson, there's only the conscious and unconscious. There is no subconscious. Any comments on that?
Well, today there's and I've never visited one, but there are some great people that do good things with hypnotherapy. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I don't know what kind of training they're getting, but it has its use now.
And I agree, and that's why I don't really agree with Russell,
Yeah, I'm just saying
because
that,
I agree that there is an unconscious mind. There is something that we can actually access, and and I don't know if it's actually, it may be there for a reason. It may be there, like as Erickson says, to actually allow people to work with us outside of our consciousness, because our consciousness, it's hard to say when are we conscious when we're speaking and talking facts from books, or is that really a subconscious program running? And this is where we sometimes begin to confuse consciousness as learning and subconscious and conscious mind of knowing. Any comments on that?
well, you've talked about before in previous nights that, I mean, we have all this stuff we read, all this knowledge, but it's useful, but I still think that getting to that stillness and just waiting to see what comes, I'm realizing by now that, yeah, it's good, all these books, but I'd like to get rid of some of these layers personally, because it was interesting when I was reading it and all this, but I'd like to get to that knowing part more. Anyway, I may be going off track here, but
No, that's what I'm looking for, is people that.
yeah. So, all this talk about unconscious, and I understand why you're doing it, because we have to understand from Walter about all those recordings that he keeps talking about, which people don't understand. Like, as we grow, we're recording all kinds of stuff in our, and then we start getting confused between, something happens, we'll run this program. Okay. And we have to be able to be, you've mentioned it before at the beginning, I think, Grant, maybe the watcher, like you said, the witness in this case. But for me, it's, we gotta get to that observer, like who's doing it, like the observer, like when something happens, you don't always have to be taken in, like you can look at it and then you might make a different decision on, So, but I've never really studied unconscious, conscious. I've never gone that way. I've never studied Carl Jung. I haven't, but that's okay. Like, I'm just saying I could see there's been a lot of thought from all these people for sure. And we're trying to understand Walter Russell. So
I think I'm particularly fascinated by Mesmer's work. It sounds like the work he was doing was absolutely amazing, and I suspect a lot of what he was doing has probably been suppressed, but it really resonates with a lot of my own experience in healing, experiencing energetic healing. And I've always, my view of health now is very much about balance and flow. And what is that flow? It's the flow, if you look at, acupuncture, it's about these energetic meridians that flow through the body. And so this shares a lot of the views there, where disease is caused by blockages of that flow, of that energetic flow. And I wonder how similar that is, just discovering it through his own work.
Yeah, I've done so much cool stuff with magnets. I'm super passionate about magnets. Our whole body is arranged. We're basically a magnetic field. And that's why the whole 5G thing is so concerning for so many people. But if you've ever heard of biomagnetism, Dr. Richard or Isaac Goiz, Goiz, you should check that out. And there's a whole philosophy on neodymium, rare earth magnets, and high, anyway.
Are you able to put that, because what we do usually, are you able to put a link in our site after?
That'd be great.
Then we could kind of look at it, like we like to share it with the others and stuff.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
That sounds really good.
But I wanted to talk a little bit more about this unconscious mind, because it's so
okay.
Just because you mentioned these programs, and it's very interesting, because I think we all have these, right? And part of the whole process of becoming conscious, or going into the middle path or into the heart, is to learn the it's all about the identification process, and identifying with the witness, so you can untangle these unconscious programs that have been kind of written for you in a lot of ways. And we talk about the collective pain body, which is in itself probably a form of a program, right? It's programming or information that we have to process
in the superconscious. Yes.
Yeah. So I guess identifying, are these programs are in this, you said the superconscious, the unconscious, and the subconscious, I guess. And is that right, or am I getting these mixed up?
Well, again, Hermeticism, if you look at mental alchemy, right? We're saying that as above, so below. Stormy sea above creates stormy sea below. If there is a program running in the collective conscious, the superconscious, or something else that's a stormy sea, we will experience a stormy sea below. That's what will materialize. As above, so below. As below, so above. So that's why I'm trying to actually explain how certain people view the mind, and where are we getting, as Walter Russell says, everything's coming from source. If we go back to kind of the beginning of our, this diagram I created, right? We have God's mind here as this magnetic light, right? That comes out and feeds into us, right? Into our mind, into our body, and that creates our reality, right? But, in between here, in between God's initial message, are all these other planes of existence, right? If this is source, in here is all these other planes, I think that Jeremy, or maybe you said we were unaware of, right? Oh, sorry. That we're unaware of, that will actually influence how we receive this initial magnetic pulse. And then once we receive it, we create the reality. So Swedenborg would say this would be angels, archangels, things that are here in this realm. So Steiner would say a very similar thing, Other people would just say, well, these are frequencies, that are hanging out. Like you said, there's, where do all those frequencies, like the, the earth frequencies and so on that go on here, where are they actually living in here, or are they living out here? And how is that influencing our red shift, blue shift into reality? And so what I'm trying to explain is that we have got to be conscious of what mind we're in at the time. Because as Steiner says, in our dream state, what are we dreaming? How is that dream state going to then turn into a reality? Or do we have to wake up from the dream and then it becomes reality? Or just by dreaming it, does it become reality? Because this would really affect how a lot of people, when they go to bed, what their last thoughts are about, and how they can control their dreams. Because if our, as Steiner says, our conscious mind is a dream mind, we're still conscious in our dream mind, and that's actually what Russell's saying too, because he says there is no unconscious. But the conscious mind is what creates reality. So even in our dream states, we'd be creating reality.
So it's so important, isn't it? Like, well, it's some practice that I've heard. I'm not saying I'm doing it all the time, but before you go to bed, I mean, to reflect what happened during the day and how you know, what came out of it. And then out of it, you could, when you go to sleep, it could work on you. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Mhm.
That's what I think. But I find like, well, I don't have any kids here or anything. I mean, as long as you still your mind or read something more, something that makes you think of more than what's going on in the world right now, for the future or for creativity, whatever, I think we can dream better. I'll say dream better because I have no other words, but I think so. And all that stuff that's out there, yeah, like there are people that are meditating today to dissipate some of these old thought forms in out there, so that we can access better information, if you like. And you know, like Grant, he says he's surrounded with, hey, you or wherever we are, eh? We can definitely help dissipate some of that. That's what I think. But anyway.
Anything else before I move on? All right.
At the end of the day, it's all about your frequency, and your frequency determines your frequencies of the frequency of thought. So like every thought is a vibration, and the lower the vibration of thought, usually the more negative or destructive the thought is, you know, about creating or destroying the life force, really, at the end of the day. So if you can resonate with the higher frequency thoughts, they kind of like, it has an entropic force on the other negative unconscious thoughts. They just kind of take care of themselves or something like that.
I'm really interested in the kind of the practical applications of this stuff. I think it's so real.
Go ahead, Jeremy. Sorry.
No, I was just, yeah, I mean, I think about like how I feel, how I dream, and how I'm in the morning if I'm reading. I don't know about what's happening with COVID and all the fear that happens on, you know, frankly, the fear even in the freedom community can be just as bad.
Exactly.
And which is why I'm so attracted to this kind of work, because I think this is the key, is figuring out how to raise our vibration beyond the fear that's generated on either side.
Yeah.
So.
And yes, and that's what I'm saying, is that both sides of those communities feed into the supraconscious.
Yeah.
The collective consciousness, which, like I said, is actually this area that's up here, you know, because it's not really in reality yet, you know, it's still being manifest. So I can't say it's over here on this side, right? Yet.
Yeah.
It's still being here, it's still being picked up on. Now, whether it's, you know, right in here, I don't know, or up here, but there are certain things, and I do agree that there are realms. We know that there's other planes of existence that are above our own, that are spiritual, that aren't physical.
Yeah.
And this is what Swedenborg says, is that, you know, you have demons and angels both talking to us at the same time. Now, what's a demon? Just a dark part of God. What's an angel? It's a light part of God, right? When you start judging, you know, good and evil, that's when you can get trauma. But they're both talking to us, and it becomes to, what do we want to manifest, and how are we going to interpret that, and what mindset are we in?
Yeah.
Are we in conscious mind? Are we in subconscious mind? Are we in unconscious mind?
Yeah.
Because each one actually has its own merit also. I mean, you know, as I don't know if we have much control, if we see something that is so horrible that our mind just does not automatically shift into a subconscious or unconscious state so that we can deal with it. You know, I don't know. And it could be a protection state. So I'm not saying that I think we should be conscious all the time. I think there's times to be conscious. And here's one, and we're going to talk a little bit about that right now, as we talk about hypnosis and anesthesia. So this is published in PubMed in 2016. Hypnosis is a physiological mind activity characterized by focused attention, absorption, disassociation, and plastic imagination. In the early 19th century, several hundred surgical interventions were described with hypnosis as the sole anesthetic. In an epoch when no anesthetic drugs were available, then hypnosis was prejudiciously abandoned and forgotten after its introduction. In the past 2 decades, an increasing number of studies on hypnosis has shown its capacity to modify the activity of the prefrontal cortex, default mode network, and pain neural matrix, including the cortex, thalamus, and so on, an increased pain threshold up to the level of surgical anesthesia. Hypnotic analgesia also prevents pain-related cardiovascular response. Therefore, it may stand in comparison with pharmacological anesthesia, yielding true protection from stress for the patient. The wealth of data available in literature provides clear evidence of its meaningful effects on perioperative emotional distress, pain, medication, consumption, physiological parameters, duration, and surgery and outcome. Hypnosis may be used as follows: as a sole anesthetic in minor surgery and invasive maneuvers and or selected patients, as adjuvant of pharmaceutical anesthesia, as in both post-operative phases in patients submitted to general anesthesia. Hypnosis, unlike any other therapeutic tool, does not call for drugs or equipment and is an attractive technique. It is free of charge, not burdened with proved adverse events, and promise to help improving cost-benefit ratios. So this is published in PubMed, so it's not like some wacky internet site.
Can I share a story?
Sure.
So I broke 2 metacarpal this spring and had an incision done to open this up and put plates on. And I had my arm in a tourniquet for 99 minutes. And in almost all cases, they put people under general anesthesia.
Mm-hmm.
I asked the anesthesiologist to give me as little anesthetic as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up going all 99 minutes conscious and just chatting it up with the anesthesiologist.
Mm-hmm.
And I attribute it to, I spent over an hour before walking into the hospital with crystals, with some meditation, with some sun gazing, and just, I don't know if it might be related somehow to putting myself in a state that allowed me to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, yeah. I think this is so real.
Mm-hmm. And that's one reason I wanted to put it in here, because it shows how powerful hypnosis can be.
Mm-hmm.
And just think, I mean, there's so many people that die on the table from the anesthesia.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And can you imagine if we could actually just use hypnosis?
Yeah.
Or
I
if they
mean,
did?
amazing.
And then all the side
I
effects?
brought food with me, and usually they're like, you got to wait hours before you can eat food, be careful.
Oh.
And I came out, I'm like, I'm ready to go home, let me go.
So
it's, yeah, and the, I guess one question is how to make this available, because drugs are predictable. You give it to anybody and you know what the effect is going to be, including the side effects. But
well, and it's available now. I mean, but very few people want to do it because it's not the standard of care, and so it's not covered by insurance.
I would also posit that it requires a belief by the person being hypnotized that it will work.
I don't know about that. Because
Really?
Yeah, because it's a trance state. And if I can I can put people in trance state that don't believe in hypnotism. They don't
Really?
even
Okay.
they don't know it. They're not aware of it.
Okay.
And it's my conjecture that we have billions of people right now in a hypnotic state that they aren't aware of.
It's fair. Fair. Yeah,
I think that much of what we're experiencing today is hypnosis.
that's fair.
You know, that it's a mass hypnotism of and a conscious mind that's bringing it to reality. We're really concerned with the physical body, but no one's really focusing on the mind.
Yeah.
No one's focusing on the health of their mind and how much that's playing into the whole, what's going on today. And that's why I'm kind of going into all this to actually maybe show a different level of protection that people aren't really addressing right now.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah.
That's why I don't agree with Russell. I believe that there are different states of mind. There is a hypnotic state, a trance state that we go into all the time. We go into it when we watch TV. We go into it when we look at information. We go at it when we look at chat rooms. Okay?
Yeah.
We become hypnotized, we become susceptible, and we don't even know that we're being programmed.
Yeah.
And that programming will have a definite effect on our physical reality, both on our body and in our environment. Because if hypnosis is so powerful that you can cut my leg off, and that's what a lot of this was used in the Civil War. They were putting people into hypnotic state, cutting off limbs, and people weren't feeling it. You know.
So you see a relationship between, I mean, certainly TV media, I get, because you're just being their program, but probably same thing with social media.
We're going to get into that a little bit more here in a second.
Okay. Great.
Okay.
You mentioned something right before the slide about that. You said that's where trauma is created, and then you went into this. And so I've been kind of tracking this for a while, trying to figure out, like, how do people get so effed up in the first place and get so, like, just drinking the Kool-Aid of these, like, they're hypnotized, obviously, but
Mesmerized.
I think it comes down to trauma, and that's how these powers that want to be, they've mastered it. Like, they know how to get someone into this binary thought process. And I think what we're doing right now is trying to get out of the binary mind and into the trinary heart. So, like, it's not just about you know what I mean by binary, input, output, good, bad, polarities. In the heart is the third polarity. It's the trinary, the third, which is the feeling, which is the empathy that you can feel for another person and hold the space and the love for them. The true God energy that we have the potential to embody is through, like, this third pillar or whatever. And what these guys do is they get you out of the heart and separate you either into the mind or the root sexual chakra, and they keep these two polarities polarized constantly, so you can't get into your center. And kind of that's where I wanted to kind of bring where this comes in. How does that kind of tie in? Because if you're totally heart-centered and aware, it's a lot harder to kind of get you out of that state of consciousness, because from my experience, like, those are the things that pull you out of the moment, is these unconscious patterns constantly, and you're not in your center. And when you get in your center, it's a lot harder to get pulled out of presence, because you know where you need to be. You know, I don't know.
Well, this is from someone who practices hypnosis. It's not hard at all to get somebody out of it if they're not on guard for it. Okay, it's not hard at all. And and that's why I wanted to bring up this hypnosis, how powerful hypnosis can be to where you can't even feel your leg being cut off. All right. And that PubMed saying that it works, right? It's not like me, pulling up some just wiki links or whatever, Wikipedia or whatever, and saying this is what works. And so let's go back to home here. So we talked a little bit about how does Russell's view of the unconscious different from work of Mesmer and Erickson and hypnotherapy, right? So everybody's pretty much understanding that, right, of Mesmer and Erickson and so on. So how is NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, used as a form of hypnosis and programming? Now, does anybody know, has anyone besides the programmers out there that use natural language programming know what neuro-linguistic programming is?
I know about it.
No.
I haven't learned a lot about it, but a big part of it that I've been exposed to is in the kind of the coaching realm, and how our own language that we use affects ourselves and our thinking.
That would be like a type of self hypnosis.
Kind of, yeah.
I mean, there's some, there's some good and bad things. I mean, it's, NLP has been used for, it's really to kind of persuade people, but it can also, like, certain, movies been put out, like The Pickup Artist, like How to Talk to Girls, at
Right.
bars or whatever,
Mm.
to begin to kind of program them and make them more receptive. The
Mm.
concept is that we have our conscious mind can only handle about 7 plus or minus 2 bits of information at any one time before it becomes confused or short-circuited. At that point in time, if I give you too many facts and begin to question why you believe what you believe, and that really comes with the word because, if I can find out what you believe, I can, what you believe, and then I say, you believe that because, once I put in that because, you've now gone into an almost unconscious mode. You're beginning to think and wonder and think of different scenarios. You're almost in a trance state. Once I can get you in that trance state, you become totally open to suggestion.
Oh God, the subliminal thing, or
Yes, exactly.
like these experiments that they did on people, and
Yeah, I mean,
even at McGill or at the
what I'm
in
saying,
Canada.
most people
know.
in Silicon Valley learn NLP to learn how to talk to people and persuade people. Okay,
Mm.
it's being used every day. It's being used in all these chat rooms. It's been used in the news. It's been used in the social media. If I can put somebody in front of you that you have some type of aware, like a good feeling about, some type of connection, the ability for me to NLP a message is heightened greatly. So my comments to you is, be very careful when you're in chat rooms or discussing things or reading things, or about who you're actually talking to and who you're forming relationship with and how they are speaking with you. Because we spend a lot of time looking at our bodies and going, oh, we need this supplement, and we need to do this, and we need to do that with our body, and this, and because everything about our body is what causes disease. But we all know that's not true. At least I'm going to try to tell you it's not true, and you can agree with me or not. That a lot of our disease comes from our mind. And then the question would be, can that disease actually be transferred into the superconscious? Which then can, it's almost like doing a virus on a computer program and then uploading it to the motherboard, to the mother computer, right? The mainframe.
You mean they make you believe there's something out there out to get us, right? Like that old poison in the air kind of thing. Eh?
Exactly.
People really believe that. There's people out there walking around really believing that.
Mm-hmm.
Believing what?
Believing that there's like some kind of thing that could attack them, because I meet people in my building, they've had the double vax and they're wearing double mask. Okay. And because they really think they need all this, because there's some kind of thing that, that can attack them.
And my question to you is, could a lot of that be subconscious, unconscious programming?
Yeah. Some of us don't fall for it and some do. That's what Grant is saying. How could the people around him can't see that and we can? I mean,
I will tell you that all of us are in some fashion.
Oh, well, for sure.
Right? All of us are in some fashion, but we have to know what mind we are working in as we relate to our surroundings. And that's why I think what Russell says is almost a little bit unsafe. If we think that we only have a conscious mind, we're fooling ourselves. We do have different states of mind, and
all of us are susceptible to it at some level.
exactly. But
Oh, yeah.
the more we become aware of the states, and when we are in those states, the better we can provide mechanisms to get us out of them and not to be and fall prey to them. So let's look at something else here.
Can I interrupt?
Okay, sure.
I'm curious how long this meeting goes.
It's going to probably go. It's probably going to go. What time is it right now? 6:30. It's probably another half an hour. I'll stop it at 6:30.
Okay.
No matter where we are within this thing. If we don't.
Got family doing dinner that I need to tend to.
Oh, I see.
That's fine.
I don't want to miss this. This is good stuff.
Well, you can always catch it. You can always catch it on Akashic Intelligence, my YouTube channel. We record it. It's being recorded.
That's true.
Okay, but we'd love to have you stay.
Yeah.
And this is really a lot of the meat. A lot of the stuff we're going to get into coming up is the meat's gone away, but I had to actually set the table first before we start getting into some of the more. So let's look a little bit at neuro-linguistic programming. And again, I'm just touching the surface on this, and I'm not trying to keep it short. Let's look a little bit about what Steiner said. We can skip this on the hypnosis and Steiner, but he's pretty much saying the same thing: is that hypnosis, works, and that you have to the laws arise out of a principle of oneness. That's not what I wanted. Where's my? I just put that in there. So neuro-linguistic programming. So Richard Bandler and John Grinder set out to discover what made some psychotherapists more successful than others. They assembled their findings into a methodology called neuro-linguistic programming. Erickson, now who was Erickson? Milton Erickson, the guy we just talked about, was one of the several therapists and communicators examined, and they created a model of this methodologies, which they called Milton model. So Milton comes from Milton Erickson. So within the Milton model, the model is often taught as an adjunct to NLP courses by organizations who mainly teach NLP. Likewise, NLP skills techniques are often taught as an adjunct to hypnotherapy courses by organizations who mainly teach hypnotherapy. So what I, as a hypnotherapist, want to try to do is to get you into trance state. And trance state is one of those states where you're kind of just staring. Now, people can do it watching TV. I'm sure you've seen it. People can do it listening to people in a discussion, and it's in that state where you kind of begin to tune out what you're seeing or listening to, and you are in a dream state, right? You're beginning to daydream, wander. There's no difference between daydreaming and night dreaming. I'll tell you right now, your mind is in the same state. You can't daydream while you're it's hard, I would say, to daydream while you're involved in an activity. It's when you're pretty much at rest and your mind is dreaming. Okay? So NLP organizations tend to teach the NLP Milton model of hypnosis if they teach hypnosis, and Erickson hypnosis organizations prefer to teach the work of Erickson hypnotherapists such as Ernest Rossi. And I've studied a lot with this book with Ernest Rossi on hypnotism and the body and healing. So I've done a lot of work with that. And Jay Haley, Bill, founder of SEPA. This approach to teaching Erickson is generally more comprehensive than the Milton model, which is primarily a role model based on language patterns. So I can put you into trance with a pendulum, having you watch that, or I can just put you into it with my voice and my rhythm that I speak with. Or I can actually put it in with how I speak to you and the type of questions I ask. So cadence can put you into trance. There's many ways to put people into trance. And we have to be very aware of that when we're talking with someone, whether or not they're trying to put us in trance, and they may not even know it, but whether they're putting us into trance and what kind of questions they are asking us and whether or not they're actually trying to control us. It's very important. It can happen any time of the day. So the Erickson Foundation, run by the Erickson families, have avoided associating itself with MOP, but BHRTI believes that NLP has a lot to offer, but however has also insisted that to be truly effective, the NLP skills and techniques modeled from Erickson should always be taught and applied with the context of hypnosis, as this is how Erickson originally intended and not taught as a separate NLP without hypnotic trance. A lot of this has to do is because if you are put into trance through NLP, they don't take you out of trance. You remain in trance after you leave. With true hypnosis and hypnotherapy, you are taken out of trance. That's why they say, wake up, wake up, wake up, right? When you're being put into trance without knowing it, you stay in trance until something happens that wakes you up. So
like a word that they plant or something.
could be. It could be lots of things. Could be lots of things. Okay. Again, I'm not saying it's all malicious. Okay. It could just be a salesman using NLP on you. Okay. But they don't take you out of trance usually. Usually they leave you in trance because they want you to still feel good when you leave the deal.
Yeah.
Right.
Interesting.
Okay. So that's why I don't think Erickson likes people practicing hypnosis that aren't qualified and aren't in a setting where people know they're being hypnotized. You know, because he was a doctor and he conscious about that. So the MILP model focuses on three aspects: rapport, like I said. So if you're in a chat and you feel like you've got rapport with somebody, building an emphatic connection with the client. In addition to verbal communication, they may include mirroring the subject's body language while avoiding mimicry, which could have the opposite effect. Overloading conscious attention. By distracting the conscious mind with vagueness and ambiguity, one is able to open the unconscious to change. See also confusion techniques in hand. Now, oftentimes within the chat of Alphabetic, I've seen like what I would call bots, or people go in there that try to create these confusion and vagueness in their statements.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen this, haven't you, Giselle?
Yes.
And all they're really trying to do is set the table for a little bit of programming.
Well, they're trying to disrupt, that's for sure.
Yeah, but they're actually trying to set this up. They're actually trying to get this going.
Yeah.
They actually begin to hypnotize the entire session, the group, into a vein that is going to be a one that they're actually controlling.
You mean in the chats?
In chats. I mean, you can watch this in chats. You can watch when people will come into chats and begin to, but very, very like overloading the conscious with either facts or with vagueness and ambiguity that you can't, and you're trying to be good to them, and it's just, but it's opened the unconscious to change.
Yes, we have over 3,000 members now.
Yeah.
And but we have a lot of admins. We've changed the bot, we've changed, and Alpha Warrior today spoke very eloquently on, well, anyway, I sent it to you, William, but
yes.
Yeah, it is not an easy task, let me tell you.
And again, I'm not calling anybody out and saying they're doing the wrong
No,
thing.
I know you're giving that example, but I know what you're saying.
And I'm just saying, be aware.
Mm-hmm.
Be aware. And so there's also the confusion technique and the handshake technique. Okay, and these are all techniques that are used, and a lot of it is just overwhelming you with facts. And when we start getting into all the facts of things about this and that and how many, and sheddings and this and that, and spike protein. They're all just, they're just trying to overload. That's all it really is, right? And then indirect communications. Clients can only meet a direct orders in two ways: with acceptance or dismissal. Most likely the latter. Indirect suggestion is a more subtle and successful way to invoke change. So what that would mean is that if you say, stand on your head, someone said, no, I don't want to do that. But you begin to say, well, you get more blood to the brain when you stand on your head, and you've got a headache, and I think if you stand on your head, don't you believe that would help you? Oh yeah, sure. I stand on their head. I just won $10 from my friend because he said I couldn't get you to stand on your head. So be very careful and see if these techniques are being invoked. That's all I'm saying.
I would love to see examples.
A really good example is if you watch a magician. So I was on the way back from Crater Lake from the Alpha Vedic
Music and Sky
thing. This is not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, and I was in Salem and it was late, and I was just having a beer at the bar in the town there, and I just so happened to meet, there's this magician who was doing like stuff in the bar, and I was like, dude, there's no way, and he stole $10 from me, and he did it in a way that was just like this. He was just doing suggestions. He was over here, then over here, distracting me, and next thing you know, I couldn't find my wallet, and he had it in his pocket.
Oh God!
So, dude was good. So if you ever want to learn how to do this, I think those guys know a trick or two.
Well,
I guess what's the bottom line in terms of what do you look for?
Just be aware, be conscious, and be conscious of when you go into trance. Because again, none of this works if you're conscious. It only works when you're in trance. So find out those things that put you in trance, which are basically these three last ones. Is first, is this someone that, before you have rapport with somebody where you're actually listening to them a lot, be sure you know who they are. Right? That's just a simple thing. Now that we have this chat and everything, we will have rapport with a lot of people and talk about very deep things that we may have never done before in the physical at a party or somewhere else, right? So I'm just saying, just be conscious of your unconscious and conscious of your subconscious, knowing that they're there, but knowing that they all have a distinct purpose, and is the purpose that they're used for the state that you're in at the time. I mean, you want to be unconscious, in an unconscious state, or in trance when you're getting your leg cut off, because you want to be in hypnosis, but you don't want to be that way any other time.
It also seems like there is a big difference in the intent. Like I might actually want to someone to use NLP and hypnosis with me if the intent is something that I'm aligned with. And so I'm just thinking out loud, like maybe even before engaging in any kind of conversation, ensure that kind of the shared intent is there somehow. And
that's the rapport. That's number one. That's really the rapport you have with that person. I mean, is this person, do you know this person well enough to share those things you're talking about?
Yeah.
Right? So again, I'm not trying to be like this, be on guard, everyone's out to get you. Because like I said, this is used every day just in sales and different things, but just be aware and be aware that I guess my point is that we are concerned so much with our body, and we do so much for our body, with supplements and all these other kind of things, that we leave our mind totally unsupported, pretty much. So
you were saying examples, Jeremy. If I think of the people I had to interview, if you like, to take care of my daughter when she was a baby. And it happened more than once, because over a period of, until she was old enough to go to nursery. And anyway, I would see somebody, I would interview them. And then not long after, people in the neighborhood, my cleaners, would actually come and tell me what's really happening at home. And then I realized when I look at somebody, I project what I'm looking for on that person. And that person became that. And I asked them these questions and they respond all in the positive. But in reality, it was totally the opposite. I'm not saying that people were evil. I'm just saying I projected. I saw this girl. I thought it was like my sister. I don't know what to tell you. And it was a constant thing that I did. So I had to look at myself. I had to look at what is it that's triggering this thing? You know what I mean? As an example.
And that's
I was breaking up a relationship and trying to disentangle myself. And then I realized when he gets on the phone, he uses certain words. By that time I could see it. I was so pissed. You don't know how much. He would use this voice that almost controls you. I'm not sure he knew, but I really didn't like it. I said, you know what? Stop right now. Stop the way you talk. Stop that tone. You know what I mean? Like a sleazy tone. I don't know how to describe, but it's funny how you couldn't see it and then you could see it. Anyway, we grow as we go forward if we look enough. But yeah, it's interesting. It's not just the word, it's the vibration. I'm not sure. Like it's many things.
It's many things. And, even within the movie Dune, where they talk about the voice, right? That is a vibrational thing. And in the voice, and it is tone and it is vibration, it's cadence and it's harmony. I mean, it's a lot of things. So I am not a healthcare practitioner, right? I'm not a doctor. The physical body, I know enough to weight lift and build muscle and do some things, know some things about supplements and diet. But there's people out there who can take care of the body. I don't know if we have really enough people out there taking care of our minds, besides people who do talk therapy, which actually incorporates a lot of the programming things that I'm talking about right now. So I really want people to just become aware of the different levels of the mind. I don't think Russell's covering it well enough. And to also become aware of what is actually causing our physical world and how we relate to it. And to be conscious of that and to safeguard ourselves against different methods that can be used to. So one thing I want to talk about a little bit, let's go back to the same page. Let's go back to home here. Okay, let me do a little bit about the radiesthesia and hypnotherapy. What time are we at? We're at 6:24 here. Let's go ahead and cover this last thing, and then we'll finish up with the rest of the stuff next week. Page down. And this is pretty. The only reason I really cover this is because it feeds into the subconscious mind and the unconscious mind and a few other things. So a lot of people are interested in the biogeometry, and they hear about dowsing and they wonder if, because Dr. Baer talks about radiesthesia and kind of where does this all fit and how does it all work with the different levels of the mind. So if you look at mental dowsing or divination, dowsing is a method of using rods or pendulums to enter into a dialogue with the subconscious mind, not the unconscious mind. As is a valuable tool. What?
He's got a pendulum right there.
Yeah. As is a tool for human transformation and mapping the human psyche. It is suitable for detection using psychic methods. Dowsing works through yes and no answers. indications of the pendulum or rod movement based a program agreement with the subconscious. This falls into the field of automatism, automatic body reaction, and auto-hypnosis. So if I have a pendulum, I don't have one on me right now, but I can put it in my hand and I can ask it yes and no answers, and it will swing backwards and forward for yes and side to side for no. And what's really saying here is that my subconscious mind knows these things, and it's being transferred down to my fingers to what they call a autonomic response, and that those my fingers, small muscles in my finger, are making that thing go back and forth in either direction. So that's mental dowsing, and that's a type of divination. It also can work with witching. So anytime that you're asking a pendulum or rods or anything a question, is there water here? Is there, you can even ask it, like Ouija board, you can ask it should questions, so on and so forth. That's mental dowsing. Okay. So that is a mental function of the subconscious mind. Now, when you get into biogeometry, you still use pendulums, but it is not mental dowsing. So radiesthesia and biogeometry are a harmonic resonance. So physical radiesthesia, however, is based on harmonic resonance. So this whole thing's out of Ibrahim Karim's books. Okay.
Okay.
So that whole mental dowsing thing is what he has defined mental dowsing as. So physical radiesthesia, however, is based on harmonic resonance through the use of calibrated instruments, strings or antenna principles. So Bayer also talks about a lector antenna.
Mm-hmm.
In this type of measurement, one should not ask questions as with dowsing, because these two methods rely on different functions of the brain. The abstract qualities scales used in physical radiesthesia interact with a conversion level of the effect of external vibration on nerve, which produce color, sound, and other sensory effects before reaching the meaning level where all sensory effects are integrated to form our three-dimension reality. So what we're getting to with radiesthesia is much more of bringing in that light, bringing in that vibrational, that resonance, and bringing it out within color, and so we're not asking it yes and no answers. It's actually giving us a qualitative scale, the abstract qualitative scale. So radiesthesia is one of the only methods I know in which to measure qualities.
Well, can you give an example of what it's used for?
Well, if you see this right here, can you see this down here in the bottom?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what we call the archetypal ruler. And it's a very powerful, powerful thing. So if you see what he's holding in his hand here is what they call a BG3 pendulum, which picks up the vibration of the essence of gold, which is basically a harmonic that they found in the tombs of Coptic Christian saints in Egypt that emitted a certain vibrational, which is basically of gold and of what he would call negative green. So on this board, there's actually your different chakras that are put on here on a grid system that the Egyptians used. But as you go over each dot, it will actually pick up if there's any. What you do is you put your sample of your DNA here, which can just be a piece of paper with some sweat on it. This is different planes of existence. And as you go over these dots, over each of your chakras, it will show you which chakra is having an issue. And then you go through each of these plane items here, and then it will show you which plane it's occurring in.
Right.
So you can then see on a qualitative level, it's not showing you how intense the problem is. It's just showing you that that's where the problem or the issue exists.
Huh.
And it's I use this all the time, and it's an amazing tool. It's just an amazing tool. And within that, we also have, pendulums that have this green, blue, indigo, violet, negative green, black, and so on over here. And these are also, well, each one has, it's like, I think I was talking to you about this earlier, a different connotation as to, like, say, blue and indigo for me is actually very earthy. Okay, it's kind of things I do for physical support. Violet and ultraviolets are spiritual. White can be spiritual, but it's also energy. Negative greens, like I said, that's that BG3. This is that, black can have the same thing. Infrared is more of a soothing. Orange is like frankincense. It's almost like an antiseptic. It's very strong. And yellow and so on. So each of these have different qualities that can aid. And this is one thing that I'm currently exploring a lot of, is how does each of these colors relate and how do they help heal? Now, the one thing that I would like to show here too, while I'm on it, and we're going to end with this, I think. But I was asked last week, am I a flat earther or
Yeah.
and I said it doesn't really matter in my life, but it's beginning to matter more now. Because as I begin to actually look at biogeometry and Walter Russell, I mean, Walter Russell's definitely a planet guy. Okay, he's definitely a sphere guy. So was Orpheus, so was a lot of the other people, the music of the spheres is it's pretty much throughout philosophy and so on. But if over here, this is a diagram out of Ibrahim's book also, in which he shows the sun here in a round planet. And as the sun hits the Earth's angles, it then forms these different bands. So this is how these different bands of color, from what Ibrahim Karim says, how they're formed. And on the bottom of the Earth is the negative green, which is the most regenerative and restorative on Earth. So what that would mean is that as people sleep, that are on the dark side of the Earth, they're getting the most generative energy from the sun. Because it's the band of negative green down there. As the sun hits at different levels, that's where we actually get higher levels or different levels of light also. So he definitely believes in the Earth and in the color. So I just want to throw that out there, because as we talk about the levels of the mind, about the conscious, subconscious, and so on, if we do want to get into these other methods of healing or dowsing, it's good to know how they work with these levels of the mind that we've talked about. Any questions on anything that we've covered so far?
I definitely want to get into more of that. Eventually, after the whole Secret of Light, I have to explore more on biogeometry for sure.
Well, I will be. They've asked, for that thing over the. Oh, you're not even going to be here over Labor Day or whatever it is. I may be doing a workshop on biogeometry.
Which thing over Labor Day?
They're having the Earth and Sky over Labor Day.
Are you going to that?
Yeah, and they ask if anyone wanted to do any workshops or whatever.
That's awesome.
So I put my name.
Okay. Well, I guess, will it be recorded? I guess we could always.
Yeah.
We'll see.
So
I expressed a strong maybe in that, or a strong interest. I haven't committed yet, but I would really like to go.
Yeah, so if you see a tent that says Akasha Surfer, that's me.
Hey! Akasha Surfer.
Riding the wave.
Neat.
I'm going to be hopefully doing a class, a little demonstration or whatever.
Wow.
Okay, so hopefully I didn't put too much in. I tried not to make it too complicated, but I had to paint the picture in order to get to where we needed to go. Any comments on what we shared today?
Just lots of strong interest in learning more.
Good.
Yeah, I want to get into orgone and like how that fits into the mix too eventually.
Well, did you watch that movie Men Who Watch Goats?
a long time ago I've seen
Okay.
that. I should watch it again.
Yeah, because he's cloud busting with his mind.
We that book from a Karim, we got that book in the co-op.
Hmm.
We have a copy of it.
Hmm. This is not in the book. This is from the training.
Oh, this is from the course. Okay.
Mhm.
Is that different than the, I'm Googling, I see men who stare at goats.
Yeah,
I assume that's
Yeah, that's the same one. It's on Google. It's on YouTube. You can watch it for free. It has quite a few. It has Jeff Bridges and what's the guy's name?
okay.
It has quite a few good actors in it. A lot of good actors actually.
Yeah. Sounds like
George Clooney. It's a dark comedy, but it's kind of nice to watch at this time to watch a dark comedy.
looks similar to what was the movie where they were I forget the name of it now. But
Yeah, so you can just Google it on YouTube and you'll find it. It's interesting because it has a lot of these concepts in there that we're discussing today.
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
But it's a
I've never
comedy.
watched it. I have
Yeah.
to try.
Nice.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming. And we'll get back and I will post this tonight. And
If you want to see some programming, you should watch that video I posted.
Okay.
It's all the COVID commercials stitched into 1 20-minute. You can just
Oh,
see it
for
back to
God's
back
sake.
and just hammer you.
Come
That-
on. I mean,
German wanted to see some examples, so I figured I'd
oh,
go.
I know what you mean, but are they alphabetic? I mean, we're always battling all this stuff, or other sites for that matter. My, oh God. Anyways, it's, I don't even look, I don't have a TV. I don't look at any of this stuff, but I mean,